you're really cute. I put that license away. I thought, I'm never showing this thing again.
So what happened? You went from 5'2" at 16 to what?
Yeah, my senior year, I probably grew 7, 8 inches, had mononucleosis. I couldn't, everything was stretched out, and I continued to.
For decades, Kevin Costner stood as one of Hollywood's most trusted symbols of integrity, steady, principled, and unwavering even when the industry around him descended into chaos. Yet behind that calm exterior, Costner carried a secret burden that grew heavier with every passing year. Now, after staying silent for most of his career, he has finally revealed a truth far more disturbing than anyone ever expected. The 9 actors he claims weren't just difficult, but truly evil, people whose actions cut far deeper than petty jealousy or on-set disagreements. According to Costner, these were individuals hired to support him, strengthen his projects, and stand beside him as collaborators, yet instead they became sources of sabotage, manipulation, and emotional harm. The shocking intensity of his accusations has caused many in Hollywood to question whether these actors were genuinely monstrous, or whether Costner himself failed to recognize the toxic storm brewing within his own circle until it was too late. His revelations expose hidden betrayals, power struggles, and manipulative games that were quietly unfolding behind camera lenses and studio walls, creating an undercurrent of hostility that audiences never saw. And at the top of Costner's list stands one of cinema's greatest legends, Marlon Brando, a name Costner claims he avoided like fire, not out of insecurity, but out of a deep understanding of Brando's chaotic force, unpredictable nature, and the psychological shadow he cast on everyone around him. As the layers of this story unfold, they don't just challenge Hollywood's heroic myths, they redefine the relationships, rivalries, and dark truths that shaped Costner's journey, forcing us to rethink everything we thought we knew about these icons and the hidden wars they fought behind the scenes. When you begin with the most powerful name Kevin Costner refused to share a frame with, you land instantly on Marlon Brando, a man the world worshipped on screen, but whom insiders quietly feared off. People like to soften Brando's legacy by saying he was merely difficult. But the truth is far sharper and far darker. Brando was a one-man storm system, unpredictable, volatile, and capable of turning an entire set upside down within minutes. Costner saw that pattern early, long before he became Hollywood royalty, and he made a deliberate decision: stay away from Brando at all costs. According to producers who worked with both men, Costner began distancing himself as far back as 1986, when Brando's camp casually floated the idea of casting him as Connery's replacement in The Untouchables. For Costner, it wasn't Brando's acting that raised alarms. Brando was a genius, no one denied it. What shook Costner was the trail of psychological wreckage Brando routinely left behind. On Apocalypse Now, the chaos reached legendary levels. Brando arrived in the Philippines not just unprepared, but almost unrecognizable, over 100 pounds heavier than promised, refusing costumes, makeup, or even basic continuity. He demanded Francis Ford Coppola rewrite entire sections of the ending at a makeshift base camp, threatening to walk unless every line matched his personal whims. Crew members still whisper about the night he tossed pages of dialogue into the river and declared, "I won't say a single line I didn't approve." Coppola was forced to shoot around his tantrums, reshaping a masterpiece to survive Brando's mood swings. This was the kind of destructive control Costner feared, not artistic brilliance, but emotional terrorism masquerading as genius, and the pattern didn't end there. In 2000, during the score in Montreal, Brando humiliated director Frank Oz by repeatedly calling him Miss Piggy in front of cast and crew, mocking his past and undermining his authority. He refused to take direction from Oz entirely, demanding anyone else step between them to relay notes like a hostage negotiator. Those who were present said it was one of the most uncomfortable sets they'd ever seen. That was the moment Costner supposedly told a close friend, "That kind of energy destroys everything around it." Costner didn't avoid Brando because of jealousy, competition, or ego. He avoided him because he recognized the danger of being trapped inside Brando's vortex, an environment where brilliance came packaged with cruelty, manipulation, and absolute disregard for the people trying to work with him. The most shocking part? Hollywood kept forgiving Brando, excusing his outbursts as eccentricity, bowing to his legend while ignoring the damage he caused. But Costner refused to bend. He stayed miles away, silent but firm, determined never to let Brando's chaos collide with his world, and absolutely unwilling to let their names appear side by side on any call sheet for the rest of his life. Part 2. Madonna, the woman who turned a compliment into a global humiliation. Madonna is the only person on this entire list who didn't need months on a set, creative disagreements, or a clash of egos to make Kevin Costner dislike her. She accomplished it in under 30 seconds, with a single gesture that became one of the most talked about disrespectful moments of the 1990s. Their brief encounter happened backstage at the Los Angeles Sports Arena in 1990 during her Blonde Ambition tour, an event swirling with cameras, dancers, journalists, and the kind of electrified chaos only Madonna could generate at her peak. Costner arrived quietly, not as a superstar looking to shine, but as a respectful guest, a man genuinely impressed by everything he had just seen on stage. He offered her a simple, wholesome compliment, the sort of thing Kevin Costner, measured, modest, raised on Midwestern manners, would naturally say, "Your show was neat." That was it. A harmless, gentle, entirely good-natured comment, but the moment Costner stepped out, the air in the room shifted. Madonna, still surrounded by the cameras filming her documentary Truth or Dare, turned toward her crew with a theatrical disgust that seemed impossibly exaggerated even for her. She shoved 2 fingers into her mouth as if she were about to vomit, rolled her eyes with mocking disdain, and announced loudly, "Anyone who says my show is neat has to go." The crew burst into laughter. Someone off-camera snickered. And the tape kept rolling, capturing a superstar turning a polite compliment from one of Hollywood's most respected actors into a global joke. What Costner never expected was that this private mockery would become public humiliation, projected onto theater screens around the world when the documentary was released. To Costner, the moment was a genuine shock. He had walked in as a fan, offering sincere appreciation. He walked out thinking he'd had a nice interaction. What he didn't know was that Madonna had already twisted his words into ammunition. And while he didn't see the footage immediately, the world did. It became a talking point, a pop culture moment replayed on television, dissected by critics, and turned into late-night jokes. Costner didn't lash out. He didn't attack her in the press. He didn't demand an apology. That wasn't his style. Instead, he let the tape speak for itself. But the following year, during an interview with Barbara Walters, he finally acknowledged what happened. When Walters brought up Madonna's behavior, Costner didn't rant or insult her. He simply said, calmly and with a polite smile, "I don't care much for her." Coming from Kevin Costner, a man who almost never criticizes anyone publicly, those 7 words hit harder than any angry outburst ever could. It was a quiet but unmistakable condemnation, proof that Madonna's attempt to turn him into a punchline had backfired in a way she never anticipated. And Madonna? Even after the documentary made her mockery famous, she never offered a true public apology. Years later she tried a half-hearted gesture, meeting Costner backstage at a concert and telling him she never meant to hurt him, but by then the damage was already part of pop culture history. Hollywood insiders took note: if Madonna could turn politeness into a joke that echoed worldwide, she could turn anything into ammunition. For Kevin Costner, the lesson was simple: some people reveal who they are in a single moment. And for him, Madonna became the rare example of someone who didn't need time or proximity to earn his dislike, just a few seconds, a fake gagging gesture, and a room full of laughter. Bruce Willis's reputation hit Kevin Costner's ears long before their paths ever crossed professionally, and what Costner heard was so consistently toxic that he made a quiet but unwavering decision: he would never share a set with Willis under any circumstances. Their tension didn't grow out of a personal encounter, it began with a steady stream of stories drifting through Hollywood in the late 1980s and early 1990s, stories so similar, so detailed, and so frequently repeated that they painted a picture Costner couldn't ignore. While Costner was building a reputation as Hollywood's calm, disciplined, quietly powerful leading man, Willis was turning into a legend of an entirely different kind: volatile, unpredictable, and famously combative with almost everyone he worked with. On Moonlighting, filmed at ABC Studios in Burbank, Willis's clashes with co-star Sybil Shepherd became the stuff of studio folklore. Crew members later described days where production didn't just slow down, it stopped entirely because Willis was furious about something as basic as lighting angles or the way a scene had been blocked. Some said he refused to come out of his trailer if he felt disrespected. Others recalled moments where he dismissed writers' notes, insulted assistant directors, or demanded rewrites in the middle of shooting. It wasn't artistic passion. It was dominance, chaotic, exhausting dominance that drained everyone around him. And as the stories spread, they reached Costner through producers, cinematographers, and even studio executives who had dealt with the fallout firsthand. Then came the accounts from directors, which solidified the pattern. Kevin Smith, who worked with Willis on Cop Out, described the experience as soul-crushing, a phrase that rippled through industry circles like a warning label. Producers told tales of Willis refusing to shoot coverage because he already gave the performance he wanted and saw no reason to help editors shape the scene. Assistant directors whispered about him walking off sets mid-shoot simply because something inconvenienced him or because he felt the crew should adapt to his mood. These weren't isolated incidents. They were a blueprint for chaos, but the moment that cemented Costner's opinion forever came much later, in 2010, when a mutual colleague told him a story that perfectly captured what Costner feared most. During a heated disagreement about blocking, Willis reportedly smashed a prop desk with such force that the set went silent. Then, without missing a beat, he smirked and bragged, "They know they can't fire me." That line reached Costner like a thunderclap. It wasn't just arrogance, it was a declaration of war on professionalism itself. And Costner's response was immediate, blunt, and uncharacteristically cold. "There's no room for people who destroy sets just to prove a point." For Costner, that wasn't a casual opinion, it was a boundary carved in stone. He has always worked in environments where respect, discipline, and collaboration matter. He believes a film set is a fragile ecosystem, one that collapses instantly when a single person injects chaos into it. Willis, meanwhile, operated like a wrecking ball, smashing through structures, hierarchy, patience, and morale with the confidence of someone who knew the studio machinery would always protect him because he was bankable. Hollywood attempted to pair Costner and Willis multiple times over the years, hoping the combination of two box office giants would create something explosive on screen. The offers came, the script circulated, and studios pushed hard. But every time, Costner declined, quietly but firmly. Not out of fear. Not out of rivalry. Simply because he refused to spend months cleaning up someone else's emotional debris or navigating an environment where another actor's volatility overshadowed the actual work. Part 5. Alec Baldwin, the man who made Costner question Hollywood's moral compass. Trouble follows Alec Baldwin with the same consistency and inevitability that discipline follows Kevin Costner, and that stark contrast is exactly where the hostility between them began. Costner has always believed that the true measure of a man isn't what he does when cameras are rolling, but how he behaves when no one is watching. Baldwin, meanwhile, seemed to leave behind a trail of public meltdowns, explosive confrontations, and deeply troubling personal moments that clashed violently with everything Costner stood for. And contrary to what many assume, Costner's distrust of Baldwin didn't start with the Rust tragedy. It started more than a decade earlier, in 2007, when Baldwin's now infamous voicemail to his 11-year-old daughter leaked to the world. The recording, filled with rage, insults, and cruelty, spread through Hollywood at lightning speed. When Costner heard it, he didn't react with outrage or gossip. Instead, he quietly turned to a colleague and asked a question that revealed everything about his worldview: how does a man talk that way to his own child? That wasn't anger. That was disbelief, pure, moral disbelief, but Baldwin's controversies didn't slow down. If anything, they escalated, year after year, each incident reinforcing the idea that he lacked the emotional stability Costner considered essential for anyone representing the film industry. In New York, Baldwin became notorious for confrontations with paparazzi outside his Manhattan apartment, shoving photographers, screaming profanities, charging across sidewalks with barely restrained fury. These weren't isolated accidents. They became patterns, headlines, and cautionary tales whispered throughout the industry. And as his temper became tabloid fuel, Costner's quiet disapproval grew stronger. Then came Baldwin's behavior on 30 Rock, the hit NBC comedy where his performance won awards but his off-camera reputation cast a long shadow. Crew members later admitted they warned new hires to stay out of his way, a sentence that infuriated Costner the first time he heard it. For him, a set must function as a workplace, a place where people feel safe, respected, and able to do their jobs without navigating emotional landmines. The idea that an entire crew had to map their movements around one actor's volatility was unacceptable to him. Costner, who runs sets with calm authority and mutual respect, saw Baldwin's environment as toxic, a workplace warped by fear instead of professionalism. But the moment that pushed Costner from quiet disapproval into permanent distance came in 2018, when Baldwin was arrested for assault after an altercation over a parking space in Greenwich Village. The details in the police report: rage, physical confrontation, public aggression, confirmed everything Costner had been hearing for years. And that night, after reading the report in silence, he finally said the words he had avoided for more than a decade: some men don't deserve the second chances they keep getting. For Costner, that wasn't judgment. It was clarity. Baldwin's problem had never been rivalry or competition. It wasn't even about professional disagreements. It was Baldwin's pattern of uncontrolled impulses, public explosions, and a refusal to take responsibility, qualities that violated everything Costner believed a leading man should embody. In an industry where reputations can be polished, forgiven, or hidden by PR teams, Costner saw Baldwin as someone who kept proving, again and again, that he was willing to let his temper destroy careers, relationships, and trust, and that, more than any script or opportunity, was the reason Kevin Costner kept his distance. Hollywood might continue offering Baldwin second chances, but Costner refused to stand beside a man whose chaos could con. Part 6: Robert Duvall. The friendship that turned into a showdown on set. Nothing prepared Kevin Costner for the shock of discovering that Robert Duvall, a man he admired long before they ever shared a frame, would become one of the most challenging collaborators of his career. Costner walked into open range believing he was directing a legend, someone he respected too deeply to ever expect conflict from. But trouble surfaced the moment the billing conversations began. Duvall didn't hint or negotiate, he delivered his stance like an ultimatum. He refused, flatly and aggressively, to take second position on the poster, even though the film was Costner's project, Costner's vision, and Costner's name that carried the marketing weight. Crew members still whisper about the tense meeting inside the Los Angeles production office where Duvall allegedly leaned forward, locked eyes with Costner, and snapped, "I don't follow anybody." Then he stormed out, leaving the room ice cold and stunned. That stubborn energy followed them onto the New Mexico set. The tipping point came during a pivotal rehearsal, one of those moments where the nuance of a scene could shift the emotional truth of the film. Costner, directing with his usual calm precision, offered a minor adjustment to the camera movement. Something small. Something subtle. But Duvall didn't just reject it, he rejected it with a public display that shook the entire crew. His voice rose, loud enough to stop conversations on the other side of the set. He insisted he knew better, accused Costner of over-directing, and dismissed the note as if it came from a first-time filmmaker, not the man who had just shepherded Dances with Wolves to Oscar glory. Witnesses described the moment as one of the rare times they saw Costner's patience tested to its breaking point, but he never lost his composure. Privately, however, the damage was done. That night, Costner confided to a producer, "He's the most stubborn man I've ever directed." The performances the world saw on screen were seamless, powerful, and deeply emotional, but behind the camera, the partnership had already fractured. They finished the film like professionals, both too disciplined to let conflict spill into the final product. But the friendship, real, long-standing, and once filled with mutual respect, never fully recovered. Costner never invited Duvall to collaborate again, not out of spite, but because trust is the one currency a director can't afford to lose. And on that set, trust died quietly between them. Part 7: Oliver Stone, the director who pushed Costner to his breaking point. What made Kevin Costner and Oliver Stone turn JFK into a battlefield instead of a collaboration? The answer revealed itself almost immediately when filming began in Dallas in 1991. Costner stepped onto the project expecting intensity. Stone was known for it, but he wasn't prepared for the deeper conflict that emerged. It wasn't about scenes, schedules, or character choices. It was about something bigger, history itself. Stone didn't just want to tell a story. He wanted to reshape the past until it matched his theory, bending facts, merging accounts, and crafting a narrative that aligned with his personal vision of the Kennedy assassination. Costner respected artistic freedom, but Stone's approach veered into territory he couldn't ignore. The first major clash erupted during a script review inside Stone's New Orleans production office. Costner questioned a scene that presented speculation as indisputable truth. Stone fired back instantly, not calmly, not conversationally, but with a force that filled the entire room. He paced like a man possessed, waving a pen in the air and insisting, "The audience doesn't want facts. They want truth." To anyone else, it might have sounded philosophical. To Costner, it sounded reckless. The distinction enraged him because the film wasn't fiction, it dealt with a national tragedy that still haunted millions. To muddy fact with interpretation was, in Costner's eyes, a betrayal of responsibility. From that moment on, tension mounted daily. Stone pushed the conspiracy angles harder.
Costner kept asking for documentation, structure, grounding.
Their arguments became so intense that crew members recalled mornings where shooting was delayed because the two men were locked in heated debate. One assistant director remembered Stone slamming his binder onto a table and declaring, "History is a narrative.
I'm shaping it." That was the moment Costner realized they weren't making the same movie.
They weren't even speaking the same creative language when production wrapped. Costner remained publicly supportive, ever the professional, ever the diplomat, but privately he was shaken. To him, Oliver Stone represented a dangerous kind of filmmaker, brilliant, fearless, but willing to twist reality if it served his argument. And for that reason, Costner never pursued another project with him. Their respect survived, but the partnership had reached its natural and final limit.